This morning I am at Ground Zero, 10th at J in Modesto, California. This is where it all started, the birth of American graffiti. Almost 60 years ago, George Lucas cruised these very streets in his Fiat. Through fate and a horrific car crash, American graffiti was born, and the car culture would become an iconic force in the United States, soon overflowing into eager hands and minds the world over. Today, the Modesto car community is coming together to pay tribute to one of those that cruised these streets with George. Bart Bartoni was an original, and for more than 70 years was true to the spirit of the American car culture. Today, more than 300 cars, customs, hot rods, and specialty vehicles will come together for one last cruise through these streets, not only as a tribute to his involvement in the history of this city's car culture, but as a leader in Modesto's growth and presence in California's Central Valley.
In cars just like this. This happened to belong to a good friend of mine by the name of Bart Bartoni. He passed away on September 7th at 89 years old. Bart owned a jewelry store on 10th Street between J and I streets. And it was Bartoni's Jewelers. After a certain time, he opened up a bar and restaurant upstairs called The Godfather, and did very well. He also opened up a corridor between 10th and the alley between 10th and 9th Streets. And he got it named officially Bartoni Lane. And it was just rededicated on last Tuesday by the City Council, and it has a new plaque on it that denotes it as Bartoni Lane, created by Mr. Bart Bartoni. Bart was a legend in Modesto. He loved cars. He helped design cars for Gene Winfield. Did all of the sketches and the drawings, and just had a real artistic talent, and just one heck of a guy. He had lived more lives in 89 years than most people live in a couple of hundred. Bart did it all, and he was absolutely super guy. We're going to miss him. This cruise today is in his honor. We're going to cruise down 10th in front of the old jewelry store, and then head out to the fruit yard for a celebration of his life.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's gather around. Thank you all for bringing one of the biggest crews. I always found that special about Bart. He invited me over one night. He goes, I had a bunch of cool stuff that you got to check out. Maybe you want to grab some of my pictures. I showed up at his house one night and found 65 boxes of newspaper clippings and photos. If any one of you guys had a chance to go through that, it is a tour of everything from school notebooks, sketches, classic cars, a sketch of Miss San Francisco, which begged the question how that happened. And every single concept car you can see, from 1940s and 50s, he was sketching stuff that you wouldn't see until the 60s. He really had an eye for beauty. He had an eye for fashion. All you know, he had an eye for jewelry. And one of the most, I grew up here. I'm a lot younger than a lot of the cruises of the day, but I remember KF5E, my favorite radio station. Any DJs here from K5? All right, the Rockin' 136. Go see Bart, the jeweler with a heart. I think everyone in this town knew that slogan and knew that jingle, but it was way much more than just being a jeweler and a heart. It was what he did to downtown, the life he brought to downtown, the creativity he brought to 10th Street. From working in men's fashion, there's some great old pictures of Bart looking pretty slick. And as I recall, every time I saw Bart, he looked pretty slick. And then he got in the jewelry business, and he changed it. They found a way to give teenagers credit, which was unheard of back in the day. And he changed 10th Street with the nightclubs that were across the street, the Purple Turnip, and everything to him was about the style, the look, and the feel, but most importantly, it was about the cars. So I'm going through these 65 boxes of pictures. Bart, where's a picture of the cruise? They're all pictures of him next to his car. Am I right? That's it. Bart looking good next to his cars. There's one of him in these nice little shorts. I don't think these are the shortest shorts I've ever seen, lean against those classic cars. I spared him and did not run that Modesto view when we gave him the Legend of the Cruise Award, but I think deep down he probably wished I had run it. So anyway, more to come from that. But you're here because Bart was amazing. And Bart was here because of all of his amazing friends. The ones he cruised with, the ones he chopped cars with, the ones he worked with Gene Winfield. Gene Winfield, back in the day, Gene was just starting, and Bart saw the vision. And Gene and Bart put together those very first car shows. Remember, these were the first car shows in the state. They didn't happen yet. The war was just over. There weren't classic car shows yet. But Gene and Bart found a way to put these things on. And people would come from San Francisco, from Oakland, from Fresno, asking these guys, how did they do their car shows? They were truly innovators, saw a world of the classic car that no one else saw. And thanks to them, these cruising stories and cruising legends happened. He was an innovator, he was a leader, he was our friend. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we're here to celebrate the amazing Bart Bartoni. The legend that he is, the legend that his friends were, and the legend that his friendships created here today is shown by the people who dragged tent in front of Bartoni Lane today, all the way out here. So give Bart Bartoni a huge round of applause right now. You all are what make Modesto, USA special. Thank goodness a guy named George Lucas decided to make a movie about our town. But when I talked to George, when we were working on the historic cruise route, the one thing he said, it wasn't about him. All he was doing was telling the stories of the people that he met. And you are all the people that he met. Bart were those people that were down there on 10th Street making the drag possible. So our job now is to continue to tell the stories. We must keep these stories alive, these people alive, the legends alive, and make sure that this doesn't get lost and our history stays part of our future. Because what we do know, communities are strong only if they celebrate their history to make a better future. And we're poised to do that because of all of you. Thank you.
Last cruise, the last cruise for Dad in a car show. This is amazing. This is so much bigger than what I thought it would be, but it's absolutely perfect. I wish I could say that I felt Dad was right here with me. He's not. I think we all know where he is right now. He's back there looking at the damn cars. I already miss him like crazy, but I'm so glad I have so many great memories with him, and I want to share some with you. And I could go on. When I started writing down things that him and I have done over the years, I could go on for hours, but I won't, because I'll sweat and shrivel up here, so I'm not going to do that. But bear with me. I have to tell some of them. I want to start when I was about 5 years old, and when Dad would come home from work, he would tell me to get on his shoes, and we would dance in the living room. I never really thought that much about it. I mean, it was fun. We had a blast. But the poor guy was on his feet all day, and then I'm standing on him at night. I mean, I feel sorry when I think about that. But then there was a time where he said, okay, get off my feet. You need to learn how to really do this. So he says, you need to watch me, and you need to pay attention to my wrists. Nothing else but my wrists, so you know when to twirl. And I'm thinking, oh, hell yeah, this is going to be great. And he would make me do it over and over and over again until I got it right, and I didn't turn the wrong way or whatever. And we had a ball, and we had so many great dances together throughout our life, his life. It was amazing. And one of the last dances I remember was on my 60th. I knew it was going to be our last dance, so it was pretty darn special. Another memory I have when I was little was he always had guys over to the house playing poker, and I always wanted to hang out with the guys and just hang out with the guys, that's all. And so this one night at dinner, he says, I wasn't real fond of vegetables back then, and he says, if you eat all your vegetables, you can sit on my lap tonight and play poker. And it was a miracle. I loved broccoli. All of a sudden, within that minute, I loved it, and I ate every bit off my plate, so I was allowed to go with him. So we're sitting there, and the guys are playing poker, and I'm excited. It was the first time I'd been able to hang out with the guys. But I got a little too excited, because when it came around to us, I looked up at him and said, Daddy, look, we have a bunch of Indians, which were the face cards. And the guys started chuckling, threw their cards in one after another, saying, I fold, and then that was the end of my poker nights with the guys. Speaking of cards, just recently, Dad loved coming over for lunch, and especially on the days that I had his great-granddaughter, Gianna. And we would have lunch and play cards, and this one day, Gianna's sitting on my lap. And when it was my turn, Gianna says, Grandma, I love your princesses. Needless to say, Dad won that game. Now to a couple car stories, and I know we all have a ton of car stories, but this one was one of my favorites. He had a 1938 Ford Phaeton that he loved. And I think, I could be corrected here from the car guys, but I think that was one of the first cars that he did with the car shows. It was way back. And I used to call it his bathtub, because it looked like a great big black bathtub to me. It was gorgeous, but it looked like a bathtub. So when Dad would, after dinner, and he would say, time for a bath, I knew that meant let's sneak out in the garage and clean the car, because he was getting it ready for another car show. So we would sit out there, and he'd put me inside the bathtub with a box of Q-tips and rags, and I had to go around all the instruments and get them clean and the door handles and everything. And we would stay out there until my mom caught on I wasn't really in the bathtub, and then she'd take me and throw me in the bath. So that was the end of that. The one thing with Dad with the cars, we all know he loved them, and boy oh boy, from the minute I started to drive, that was his thing. They better look damn good. Better keep them clean inside and out. No fingerprints, no nothing, keep them clean. But the biggest thing, he said, get all those emblems off of there. Who needs to see that it's a V8 or a Ford or a Honda or whatever? Take off the, here I'm Italian, my arms are gonna start falling. Take off those emblems, the car's gonna look sleek and clean. Get some fishing line and a hair dryer, warm them up, peel it off. And most of our family does that nowadays. We all do it. And it does look better. Dad loved car and jewelry design. We all know that. But he also loved gardening. I can remember so many times in the morning, he would grab a cup of coffee and head out in the backyard in his boxers. And we would see him walking back and forth, and he'd have a shovel with a plant in it, wondering where to transplant, which I do that nowadays too. Well, just wait, it gets worse. So, almost every morning, if we waited long enough, I'd look out the kitchen window, and here is Dad out in his boxers in the front yard transplanting a plant. And I'd roll the window, now I'm showing my age, roll the window, open the kitchen window, and I'd yell out there, Dad, you're in your boxers. And he would laugh and say, oh, they look like swim shorts, what's the big deal? I said, well, when you squat down, it's all kind of a big deal. Boxers. And so the minute I said that, then he'd do it every morning just to embarrass me. There was never a dull moment with Dad. I can remember Dad telling me at a very young age, don't expect things to be handed to you. If you want it, work for it and get it. If you need it, that's what I'm here for. I'll give you what you need, but if there's things you want, that's up to you, kid. Okay. I wasn't real fond of that, but okay. So the next story I'm going to tell you was about making money in the garden, in the yard. We had 8 azalea plants out front. And every spring, after the flowers would bloom, they'd die, shrivel up, and Dad would go out there with a paper bag and pick off all the azaleas. So this one day I asked Dad, can I make some money? Can I do the azaleas? And he's like, sure, I'll pay you a penny an azalea. And I thought, oh, hell yes, I'm going to get $8 at least. This is great. And so he sends me off, gives me a paper bag and sends me off, and I go out there and I start picking, and I get like 20 off, and I'm thinking, oh, this is going to take forever. So I snuck over and got the garden hose, put a jet sprayer on it, and I went and I sprayed all the azaleas down, and all the dead flowers came off, and they got a good watering. What's the big deal? So I went back in the kitchen and I started counting the azaleas at the kitchen table, and I was over 600 azaleas. And he comes in, he goes, how in the heck did you do that so quick? I said, well, I told him what I did. And he looked at me and he grabs in his pocket, and I'm thinking, oh, this is great. I'm going to get my $8. He puts down 40 cents on the kitchen counter. He says, you cheated. I said, what do you mean I cheated? He says, you cheated. This should have taken you all day. You're going to get 40 cents. Take it or leave it. 5 cents a plant. I took it. Some of the best lessons I learned from Dad, though, were in the jewelry store. He would always be standing out front, like Chris was saying, looking like $1,000,000, always smoking a cigarette. I don't ever remember going down by the jewelry store where he wasn't standing out there if he wasn't with clients. He loved all walks of life, as we can see that here today, and I absolutely loved that about him. I can't remember a time where he said he didn't like somebody. He just loved people, he loved life. And when I was around 14, I said, can I make some money now in the jewelry store? So he said, sure, you can make some bows and wrap packages, and you can call the bank to clear checks, because that's how they did it back then. So this one day, we're standing outside, and he says, Vicki, I don't want you to ever judge people by their cover. People can be dressed to the hilt. They can be successful, but not have a pot to piss in. And then you can have people that aren't well dressed, and you think they don't have a penny to their name, and they'll surprise you. So there was Christmas time, and I'm at the jewelry store helping out. And this guy walks in old, raggedy overalls. And all the salespeople were busy, and no one really acknowledged him. And sure enough, Dad looks over and says, sir, I'll be right with you. So he finished with this customer. He went back to the guy, and this guy starts looking at everything. I mean, watches, necklaces, you name it. Belt buckles, everything. He was doing his Christmas shopping. That's what we found out. He was there to get everybody in his family a Christmas present. So, long story short, Dad hands me the check. It was over $3,000 or something. So I go and I call the bank and give her the information on the check. She puts me on hold. She comes back on the line and she says, will you please tell Mr. Bartoni that check is good? And she kind of chuckles and she says, matter of fact, tell him if this gentleman wants to buy the entire jewelry store, he could do it. That was my lesson right there of don't judge a book by its cover. The last story I have about the jewelry store is how he just, I don't know, he was strict with me, but he did it all for good reason. At the times when he did it, I can't say I wasn't nuts about it, but when I look back at it over the years, I was definitely good with it. It was great lessons. I worked with a gal, and she wanted to go to the jewelry store and get her mom something for Mother's Day. So I said, well, I'll walk down to the jewelry store with you and introduce you to Dad and see what you can do. So she goes in and she gets a necklace for her mom right away, and of course Dad gives her a discount, a great deal, blah, blah, blah. And as he did with many of you, I know. And as I'm standing there waiting, I see that some new watches had come in. And I see this watch, and it was different, and I loved it. So I asked Dad when they were done, I said, how much for this watch? And I'd already looked at the price tag. And he looks at the price tag, and he reads off just the amount of the price tag. And I said, you're kidding, right? And he says, no. I said, well, why does she get a discount? Why can't I get a discount? He says, because I know damn well if you won't walk across the street to Rogers or anywhere else, if you want the watch, you can pay full price. So, I got the last laugh on this one. So, I leave. Susie and I leave, go back to work, and I'm just thinking about this watch. I want this watch. So, the next week, I said, do you remember that watch I was looking at? She says, yeah. I said, will you go back and buy it for me? And then I will pay you. And the funny thing is, as her and I were driving down to the jewelry store when she was getting the necklace, she made the comment to me of, I bet you can walk in that jewelry store anytime and pick out whatever you want, whenever, you know, anything you want. I said, oh no, you don't know my dad. No, that's not how it works. And I knew she didn't believe me, but she ended up believing me. So she says, yeah, I'll go down there, I'll buy it. She goes, he gives her a hell of a deal. She comes back, I give her a check, write a check to her, put it on my wrist, and I thought, I called Dad and I said, hey, you want to meet for a drink tonight? So we meet for a drink, and the minute he walks in, I'm doing this with my hair. And he looks over and he starts cracking up and goes, pretty clever, kid. The next is a story about the Godfathers. And oh my God, are there stories at the Godfathers, but I can't share all those. Anyhow, this is one of the funniest ones. Dad had invited me to lunch and to meet him at the Godfather. So I go there on my lunch hour, and when I walk in, the waitress says, oh, but he's in the kitchen. The cook didn't show up today. I'm thinking, oh, gads. So I go back there, and here's Dad. He's got spaghetti, and it was a mess. So he sees me, and he says, oh, thank God you're here. Put on an apron, start making spaghetti. I went, Dad, I have about 45 minutes. Looked at my nice watch and said, I have about 45 minutes left to my lunch hour. He says, you work fast. Put on the apron, and let's do this. So I start doing some stuff, and I said, wait a minute. We don't even know how to make half of these meals on the menu. And he says, I've already told the waitress to tell everybody we're having spaghetti, French bread, and salad. So get busy. Oh my gosh, we burnt so much French bread. We had spaghetti and lettuce. If the health department had walked in that day, that would have been the end of the Godfather. But we had a lot of laughs. Dad loved his grandsons, Jeff and Chad. And Dad thought he was pretty darn tricky when they got into grammar school. I get a call from grammar school addressing their attendance. And I'm telling them, I know they're at school. I drop them off every morning on my way to work. And they said, well, yes, they do. They are in class in the mornings. But in the afternoon, your dad keeps picking them up for dentist and doctor appointments. Come to find out, the boys and my dad, for months, had this little secret from me. He would pick them up, take them to the movies, eat probably 2 buckets of popcorn, knowing Grandpa, and then drop them back off at the YMCA so I would never know. He was always in mischief. This is probably one of the funniest ones. Dad got a big kick out of this. I'll never forget, one day I'm in my office, and my office had a big picture window that looked out into the parking lot. I'm in there interviewing a gal, and I had to leave for a minute because I'm thinking I'm going to hire her. I went to get some paperwork, and I come back, and she looks a little startled, and she says, there is a homeless man that's been knocking on your window. And I think he wants to eat because he keeps doing this. He looks in and then he does this. And I said, well, I don't see anybody. She goes, oh, he was here, trust me. And so okay, so we go on with the interview and all that jazz. And sure enough, here comes that homeless man knocking on the window, looking in this. It's Dad. He had been working in the yard all day, and he was filthy dirty. Hair, he was just a mess. Not the normal Bart you would know when he's all dolled up, but he was a mess, and that was his way of getting my attention because he didn't want to come in the office because he was so dirty, so he just put his face up there and just kept knocking till someone was going to acknowledge him and go eat lunch with him. Like I said, there was never a dull moment with him. We had a car show in Jackson Barrett he wanted to go to, in Arizona. So we flew to Arizona, and Lisa had just got a handheld GPS. Him and I had never used one before. And she thought it'd be a good idea because neither one of us knew where we were going or what we were doing. So we got in the rental car and we turn on this GPS. We can't get out of the parking lot because the minute she would say turn left, Dad would turn. We didn't really, and then she'd say recalculating. Well, we never waited long enough for the sentence where she said turn left in 500 feet or whatever. So it was a disaster. We laughed so hard. So we finally get our way out of the parking lot, and we're driving for a bit, and she says something about turn left or right or whatever, and we do it again. After about the 5th time, Dad looks at me and he says, he gave her a name, a special name, which I will not repeat here, but he named her. And then he looks over the last time she said recalculating, and he says, wow, she's pissed. She's getting an attitude. I said, Dad, I lost it. I'm dying laughing. Tears are running down my face. Dad starts laughing. He doesn't even know what I'm laughing at. He starts crying, laughing, and we have to pull off the side of the freeway to just pull ourselves together. And when I told him that was not a live person, we lost. I think we sat there for 10 minutes laughing. It was so funny. Another great time I had with Dad and several of my friends that are here today was American Graffiti when he was the Grand Marshal. And we had family that came from Arizona, friends that came from Sacramento, Walnut Creek. It was a blast. But after that parade, Dad was not done partying. He was, let's go do this and celebrate. So we ended up at the boardroom dancing the night away, and it was a blast. Now, I can't forget the little story about his latest love of life, his great-granddaughter, Gianna. Remember, I could not touch the cars. I got to clean them, but I had to sit on my hands when I was in his car so I wouldn't touch the dashboard, windows. I couldn't touch anything. This little poop comes around, and he puts her in his truck, and he would sit on her lap. And I hate to say it, Jeff and Jamie, but he drove around a little bit with her on that street. And she would say, "Go, Papa, go." And she would honk the horn, and she would push every button she could touch. And he loved it. He absolutely loved it. But the funniest part is when he would drive away and he'd take off, the music would be blaring, the windshield wipers going, the hazard lights. It was hilarious, but he loved it. Oh yeah, there she's talking right now. She definitely lit up his life. That's all of our lives, that's for sure. Last but not least, I have to thank Lisa for becoming part of Dad's life. If it wasn't for her, we would have been having this day 30 years ago. Not a doubt in my mind. He was wild. As we all know, Dad was wild and young at heart, to say the least. Very young at heart. And Lisa, on the other hand, is very easygoing, the most easygoing person I think I know. And just, I always say, she's a good old soul. She was perfect for him. They were a perfect match. And she would let him do what he wanted. I mean, you could decorate the house the way you want. I mean, she just let him do his thing. So it was a perfect match. She tamed him down. His heart attack, I think, had a little bit to do with it, but I truly feel Lisa got him through life, that's for sure. She helped a lot. And I'll never forget a story, because I know people have thought this over the years, about the age difference. But it was the best, it was the perfect age for both of them. I had called out to the house one Sunday, and Lisa answers the phone, and she goes, "Oh my God, I'm exhausted." And I said, "What's wrong?" And she says, "Well, first we had to go to a pancake breakfast early in the morning, then to church, then to 2 car shows. We just got back from a spaghetti feed. We've been home for 5 minutes. I'm laying on the couch, and now your dad wants to go to the movies." He just doesn't stop. If I was even close to his age, there is no way in hell I could keep up with him. I said, "Well, then that's why you two are together." So Lisa, thank you for taking such good care of him all those years.